We have the components of the star. You have the template and the 3 different fabric for the odd star points. So what you do first, place fabric 8, that is the little point here, for foundation point 1, for foundation point 2 actually, on top of your mat. Then you take your background piece for the star point on top, and as you can see, this is the 5 1/4 and this is the 5-inch width. And if you put them down, just pay attention to this. I'm not putting it like this, but just a little bit under. Let's say about 1/4 of an inch. That's all you need. So this is what you see right here. Take your template, and the only thing you have to do is put the template on top of the piece, just like this. And if you will fold it on this line, you can see that you do have enough fabric in this specific corner. What you also can see, there are little arrows on the pattern, and the little arrows indicate a stitching direction. So if you pay attention to this, that makes it so much easier. Always start with a little back stitch. Go all the way down, and normally you will say, I will stop at this point. I don't want that. If you go into the seam allowance and you stop at the end of the seam allowance with a back stitch. Because we cut the thread very short, the chance that you unravel your stitch is very big. And I think you can achieve a better result when you close the points. Because I use a regular paper instead of the newsprint that is in the original pattern, I will smaller my stitch length, so it is easier for me to remove the paper when we are that far. So that is my first step. I bring down the size of my stitch length. I put my needle exactly in this corner, go all the way down, and then we take the next step for the large point, number 3. So I take this and I bring it to my machine, just like this. I hold it in place. I bring the needle down, manual, and then I bring my foot down, yep, and I start with that little back stitch. That is a really important thing. And then I go down. And you can see, if you follow the lines of the stitching order, the little arrows, I go into my seam allowance, and there I stop. Now I take it from the machine and I put it on top of my cutting mat, and here you can see the little back stitch in here and the back stitch in here. That is important. What you also can see, I stay really close on the line. That is important because if you assemble all the pieces together, we want the start point like this and not like this. So stay on the line the best as you can. It is absolutely important. So now you go to the back side, just like this, and you trim the little threads that are left behind. The seam looks like it's a little bit bigger, so we can cut it just the way I do it. You can use it at 1/4, but I love to use a big sharp scissor to bring down the seam just a little bit. You can see it. Fold the paper back, turn it, and finger press. This is the stage that it's not necessary to press every seam you're doing, but if you finger press, it's a very good result already. And you can see we have a beautiful leftover piece on this side. Now this is the piece that we are going to use. And again, if you pay attention to the little arrows for your stitching direction, so right side, and the only thing that you have to do, you fold the paper just like this. That is my little stitch over here. And you use your rotary cutter, you add a 1/4 ruler or your large scissor to bring back the seam allowance. It makes it a little bit easier if you position the fabrics and the piece. Leave it folded, because if you're paper piecing, you automatically mirror your piece. And I know that is a hard thing to understand, but if you do it like this, you can see in the direction of this point where your fabric has to go. And the only thing that you do, just put it down, just like this. That's all you need to do. If you find it easy, you can pin it. So now it's time to fold it back, just to stabilize the piece. Check it if it's still okay, and it is. So this is how it looked like. What we do next, put your needle in here, back stitch and all the way down. Look at the little arrows and you end in a seam allowance again with that little back stitch. I bring the needle down, I bring my machine down, I do my little back stitch, just like this. And I will end with a back stitch. We have a nice small seam. You can see that, the little back stitch here and here. And I've got my little thread. The next thing what you have to do is finger press. And again, finger press the best you can, just like this. And you can see we have a beautiful point with enough fabric all around. You can also see we have an extra seam allowance here. That extra seam allowance is extremely important when we assemble all the pieces together. So our next step is to mark that extra seam allowance and remove the paper. Okay, now it's time for the real work. We have to get rid of all the extra fabric that you see around it. And we do have that second seam allowance. So the first thing what we do, we cut the fabrics here and then we go to the second seam allowance. So take your ruler and your rotary cutter, and now you can see why we leave that smidge, why we have that smidge, because it is so much easier to place your ruler on top of the outside lines, because if you cut that, it makes it so much harder. I also like to use my smaller rotary cutter now. It's a little bit easier to work with, so I just put it down. Now remove this. And you can see how easy it is. I turn the piece because I want to cut this one as well. Hold your hand firmly on the template and the ruler. So this is how it looks like. So now we go to the second seam allowance. The first thing what you do, take your paper scissor and cut only the paper, not the fabric, from the piece, exactly on that middle line. Take your marker and mark the number of the point. This is my number 1. And I mark it exactly on the bottom, just like this. So as you can see, we mark the bottom just like this. It's a tiny dot, that's all it takes. And now it's time to remove the paper. You can see I have a lot of extra fabric. I could cut it exactly on the outside line, but this makes it so much easier to work with. I will trim it when I assemble the entire star, so I can leave it the way it is. Also, what I want to say is when you work with foundation piecing, it is so much easier when you assemble all the pieces together to remove the paper. And I think when you remove the paper, you have more bias, you have more flexibility in the piece, and that is a big help when you assemble all the points together, because sometimes you have to stretch it a little bit. So let's remove the paper from the template. But before you do, remember, always cut the outsides, always cut the second seam allowance from the paper, always mark the bottom and write the number of the star point down. So now it's time to remove the paper, and because I use a very small tiny stitch, because I use the regular paper, it is so easy to take it off. And I always start here with star point number 3. That is so much easier. Then I take this one here, just take it off. Just one point, don't throw this away. We need that. I know it sounds silly, but we need that. So here we have a beautiful point. We have a beautiful curved seam allowance here, beautiful straight edges, and the number of the point. So, but what is the final result? And as you can see, we do have a perfect point, sharp, crisp, easy to work with. So what we do next, place them in the right order. And as you remember, this is star point number 1. So I line this one up just like this. Then I take my number 2, my number 3, number 4, 5, and as you maybe can see, I have changed the colors of the orange. Remember when we cut the strip that it was so dark, so brown, and I love the brightness of the orange. And finally, this is my number 8.